Vancouver News.
So it really is affecting literally everybody, including healthy adults.
Smoky skies, devastating wildfires down south bring a choking haze to BC. Also,
today is really difficult to accept.
18 years, gangster Jamie Bacon sentenced for his role in the Surrey 6 killings. And
it's an illness, it's a disease that needs treatment, and it's killing our people.
are people's views shifting on BC's ongoing opioid crisis?
This is CBC Vancouver News.
It has dominated conversations in Vancouver in the same way it has blanketed BC's skies.
You don't need to look far to see the smoky haze that's obscuring views and creating breathing difficulties for some people venturing outdoors. And indications are it's not going to get much better anytime soon.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. The source of all that smoke, massive wildfires burning in 3 western U.S. states.
Fires that have forced 500,000 people from their homes in the state of Oregon alone. Susanna De Silva on the panic and the horror in an area ravaged by fire.
And my front porch.
This is all that's left of Marian Talerski's home of 30 years.
Brand new washer, dryer, refrigerator.
Entire towns in Oregon have been almost completely decimated, but exactly how much and who has been lost is still unknown.
There are early reports from our state police that there are dozens of missing persons related to the fires.
500,000 people have been told to leave their homes as 2 large fires threaten to merge near the suburbs of Portland.
It's scary. It's so scary to go and leave your home, everything you own.
We survived the Paradise Fire from 2018, November 8th. Lost everything then, so there's not much to lose now, I guess, for us.
The governor asked people not to go into fire zones despite rumors of looting, but those aren't the only rumors officials are dealing with. Some people are even bringing politics into it, blaming the fires on right or left-wing groups. One sheriff's department said rumors spread just like wildfire, and now our 911 dispatchers and professional staff are being overrun with requests for information and inquiries on an untrue rumor that 6 Antifa members have been arrested. Meanwhile, Washington state is battling fires of its own, and California has seen an unprecedented level of destruction, more than 12,500 square kilometers burned, and there are 2 desperate people searching for loved ones.
They said they saw her leave with some of her friends, and that's all we really know.
In a fire season that is far from over. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
All right, and let's bring in meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe now.
And Joe, it has been a very smoky day. You can see it in behind you. How bad have things been, and are they going to improve over the weekend?
This is really the worst air quality we've seen since 2017 and 2018, back-to-back record fire seasons here in BC. The smoke, you can feel it, you can see it, and you can taste it too out here, and it is getting worse as we head into the afternoon, and unfortunately getting worse as we head into the weekend. I just want to show you the downtown behind me. You can normally see Harbor Center, that eerie orange glow we saw in cities down south now appearing behind me, and normally you can almost make out the North Shore behind me. The North Shore Mountains usually so clear from here. I would say visibility is down around half a kilometer right now, so definitely thickening as we move into the evening hours. And this is dangerous to all of our health, not just those at risk. Take a listen to Environment Canada, who have issued special weather statements on what kind of situation we're dealing with.
So a slightly different origin, slightly different pattern, but again, it's mixing down. We've got air quality well above 100 micrograms per cubic meter here in Victoria. So it really is affecting literally everybody, including healthy adults. We're recommending that they don't choose to recreate and exercise outside unless they really, have no choice.
Take a look at this snapshot I just took of those fine particulate matters Armel was just talking about. You can see the reds right across Metro Vancouver. That's parts per million higher than 250 in some cases. And on a normal day, that number is less than 10. We are seeing some of the worst air quality anywhere in the world right now in Vancouver, and it's expected to expand. Look at the air quality statements issued by Environment Canada all the way up to Prince George, all the way out to Haida Gwaii, and all the way through to the Rockies. We're going to see this expansive on Sunday. This is what the smoke models are projecting as it pulls that smoke from both Washington and Oregon, with a slight shift in our winds. And taking a look at the latest smoke projection models, it does look like we could be dealing with this level of air quality right through until Monday. That's the next time I see a change in our weather pattern. I'll talk more about that coming up.
All right, look forward to that. Thanks, Joe.
Now to a developing story in the Fraser Valley. Abbotsford police say they have shot a suspect and an officer has been injured after an attempted robbery at an outdoor store this afternoon. Our Dan Burrett joins us in studio now. So Dan, what else do we know?
It happened around 3:15 this afternoon, Lien, at Cabela's on McCallum Road and Highway 1. Police say they were called to a theft at that store. 2 suspects came out, they say, and they were met by an officer. The force says one of the suspects ran away. The other pepper sprayed the officer, also ran away, then returned to spray the officer again and attacked him. Police say that's when that officer shot that suspect. The officer and suspect were taken to hospital. Emergency Health Services says it airlifted one person from the scene in critical condition. Another was taken to hospital by ground ambulance in serious condition. The force says it managed to arrest the other robbery suspect who took off. The public is not in danger, but you are asked to stay away from McCallum Junction. That's that mall at Highway 1 and McCallum Road. Police said the shooting will be investigated by an independent agency. That will likely be the IIO, the police watchdog here in BC. Lien?
All right, thanks, Dan. Dan Burrett reporting for us tonight.
Hospitalizations due to COVID-19 are up to 49 now, the most since mid-May. Yet another indication BC needs more vigilance in its battle against the virus. However, the number of those in intensive or critical care is down slightly to 10. Nearly 5,300 people have fully recovered from the virus. BC is reporting 132 new cases today, the second highest single-day count. And active cases are peaking once again, now up to 1,461. Interior Health is warning of a possible exposure at a private party in Kelowna. Any guests who are at the Zed Hotel September 7th are being asked to self-monitor for symptoms.
Parallel pandemics is how some are describing the outbreak of COVID-19 and the opioid crisis in this province.
Now, a new study shows despite concern about the viral pandemic, more British Columbians have actually been affected by the overdose crisis. CBC's Impact Team reporter Belle Puri with that story.
It's been over 4 years since Brandon Jansen became a face of BC's drug crisis.
That was really the start of when it was determined to be an epidemic.
The 20-year-old died of fentanyl poisoning while in a treatment center in Powell River.
When you compare it to what's happening with COVID, COVID is a pandemic, but we have a parallel pandemic.
And its impact is evident in a just-released study. The research shows 31% of British Columbians have either had someone in their immediate family or circle of friends struggle with addiction or die from an overdose. That's triple the number of people who know someone who has COVID-19 or has died from it.
I think the goal of the poll was really to put it into perspective and say we have 2 major crises, and let's not forget about either of them.
The survey also found 81% of BC's population feels the impact of drug addiction in their local community is either extremely negative or moderately negative. 3 months in a row now, drug-related deaths in the province have peaked like never before. BC's numbers are at an all-time high. In June, July, and August, the province recorded over 170 fatal overdoses. And provincial health officials say since the peak of the COVID pandemic, drug use and deaths are up. The virus outbreak, experts say, has made a bad situation worse.
We've done a lot at bending the curve for COVID-19, and now we really need to bend the curve of the overdose crisis and really put the same urgency and effort into addressing people's lives. We're in two public health emergencies that are colliding together.
Michelle Jansen is doubly aware. 5 months after her son died, family friend Guinevere Stadden also died of an overdose. She was 16.
I tell the people that say, oh, it's not in our circle, we don't know anyone. If it hasn't entered your circle yet, it's coming.
Belle Puri, CBC News, Coquitlam.
Local gangster Jamie Bacon has been sentenced to 18 years in prison for his role in the so-called Surrey 6 murders. But with credit for time already served, the Red Scorpions gang leader has less than 6 years behind bars.
And while the sentence wasn't a surprise, it was a joint submission by defense and Crown. Families who lost loved ones more than a decade ago say they aren't happy about it. Our Tina Lovegreen joins us in studio with more. So Tina?
Well, after waiting 13 years for this day, Eileen Mohan says justice was not served. Her son Christopher happened to be walking out of their apartment when the killers were nearby. They were there to carry out a hit on a rival gang leader over a turf war. But Christopher, along with bystander Ed Schellenberg, a gas fitter who happened to be there making repairs, was also murdered. In July, gangster Jamie Bacon reached a deal pleading guilty to a charge of conspiracy to commit murder. And as part of that deal, the Crown recommended 18 years. But with time served, Bacon could be out in less than 6 years.
I cannot justify my son's innocent death with the sentence that was handed out today.
In her sentencing, the judge said Bacon and his associate had a callous disregard for human life and that to conspire with others to kill people is among the most despicable crimes imaginable. But she did accept the sentence jointly submitted by the defense and Crown, saying it's rare for a judge to override a submission and that this case did not meet that bar. She also said that the agreement spared everyone a long, complex trial that may have not ended in a conviction due to RCMP misconduct during the investigation.
The investigative team and the prosecution team worked tirelessly to reinstate and renew these prosecutions. But there is never a certainty of conviction following a trial. These cases had their issues, their complications, and their challenges.
While this sentence does bring an end to a lengthy prosecution, the fight is not over for Eileen Mohan, who vows to fight for change in the criminal justice system, and she'll be back in court after 2 other men convicted of 6 counts of first-degree murder for the killings have appealed their sentences. Mike, Leanne?
All right, more to come. Thanks for that, Tina. $30 million of safety upgrades are coming to Banff Road. This almost a year after a fatal bus crash that claimed the lives of 2 University of Victoria students. The BC government and the Huayet First Nations will be splitting the cost of the improvements. $25 million will be put up by the province and $5 million from the First Nation. They have long been calling for safety upgrades. The 76-kilometer logging road provides a vital link for citizens living in the nearby village. It's also a key route for loggers, emergency services, and researchers to the Banff Marine Science Centre.
We cannot undo what has happened, the unfathomable heartbreak for families. But today, we are looking ahead to a safer road that will better protect everyone who travels on it.
While the status of the road won't change, the road will get a hard surfacing with a seal coat. The road will also have improved drainage with new culverts that will greatly reduce the likelihood of closures due to flooding. People who use food banks across Vancouver are having a harder time accessing food during the pandemic.
Community advocates say it's because the Greater Vancouver Food Bank shut down 12 food hubs back in March.
As Eva Yuguen-Senge reports, hundreds of low-income families and seniors were left in the lurch.
This emergency food program popped up in South Vancouver after the pandemic hit. Local organizers stepped in after the neighborhood food bank hub was shut down.
We knew people would be coming to our door and that they would be scared and that they would be hungry and that they would be anxious.
The Greater Vancouver Food Bank says it had to close its 12 neighborhood hubs across the city because they were too small to keep up physical distancing.
If anybody was to catch the COVID-19 virus on the food bank team, then we would probably all end up in quarantine and then we would be in a much worse situation.
Instead, the food bank set up in 3 central locations, including its main warehouse in Burnaby. But Esmail says the long commute was not an option for many in her community.
The unknown of how to get there, the language barriers, and the physical frailty of a lot of the seniors to pick up bags and carry them on transit for a 45 to 60-minute ride is intimidating.
Seniors advocates in the West End say the neighborhood faced similar challenges.
We've had many older adults that have not felt safe leaving their homes during this pandemic. So trying to find ways to get them access to emergency food supports has been challenging.
The food bank says it has no plans to reopen the neighborhood hubs. Instead, it's giving supplies to local organizations so they can deliver to clients directly.
I think some of these groups out in the community, they know the senior citizens in their area, and they know people with mobility issues far better than we do. So I think it's actually going to end up being a better system.
We need storage, we need refrigeration, we need transportation, we need systems to register people and to make sure that we're not holding expired food. You know, we're not set up as a food bank.
It's for these reasons the South Vancouver Neighborhood House recently stopped its food program. Esmail says they're now looking for a new space to safely start up again. Eva Yeung, CBC News, Vancouver.
Dr. Bonnie Henry has become BC's face in the fight against COVID-19. This week, she sat down for an extensive interview with the National's Ian Hannah-Madsing. Highlights from that conversation next. And thanks for staying with us during our ad-free live stream. The NHL playoffs continue this weekend with all 4 remaining teams in Edmonton. It's an exciting time for the city, fans and players, but life inside the bubble isn't all that glamorous.
Workers there face unique challenges as they try to stay safe, even while doing what used to be the most basic of tasks, like getting a haircut. Min Darawal reports.
Hairdresser Craig Boa has little time to waste these days. The owner of Weekly Trim True can usually be found in his salon cutting his clients' hair. His shop is located across the street from Rogers Place in the Mercer warehouse. But since last week, he's been set up on the concourse inside the NHL bubble.
You know, my mom wouldn't recognize me, just like full hazmat suit, mask, shield, gloves, surgical gown, sanitizer. But yeah, it's pretty serious in there for sure.
The opportunity to enter the bubble came about thanks to his friend Max Kerman. The lead singer of the band, the Arkells, just happened to be talking to someone inside the NHL bubble, and the conversation of haircuts came up.
They were talking about how everyone's hair is kind of getting out of control, and Mac's like, oh, I know a guy in Edmonton.
Boa went through several checks, and it's been a whirlwind ever since. Haircuts cost $50, and the NHL helps subsidize the cost.
The first day I showed up at 8, set up my station, and I was there cutting till 8 p.m., so 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., yeah. Just back to back. We actually established like a bit of a wait list going on. One of the girls that works for the NHL, Francesca, she's an unreal job of just like managing my schedule kind of thing.
For freelance cameraman Michael Carroll, bubble life ended last Saturday after 42 straight days and 63 games. Crews were cut down last week now that there's only 1 playoff game being played per day.
There was quite a few days with 3 games a day. Yeah, I noticed a couple, my calves and some muscles, here and there were getting pretty tight. I mean, I noticed that it would be cold in a regular game with people, but this stayed cold, obviously, the whole time. There's no people in the arena, right?
While the long hours and frigid temperatures was a physical test, being away from loved ones was equally challenging.
I'm kind of a little bit used to being away on some longer events. I'd think about my wife and wonder how she was doing and if she was handling it.
Something he or his wife won't have to worry about anymore now that Carroll's bubble life is behind him. Min Darawal, CBC News, Edmonton.
I think that's got to be the hardest part, to be away from family, friends, everybody that you know for so long.
Yeah, and we've heard the players talk about that, although I don't think there's a lot of sympathy, shall I say, for the players. But no, the support staff are there dealing with a lot of the same issues. So life in the bubble. That's
life
for sure.
in the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll be back in a few moments with more local news. Stay with us.
The world is not back to normal. Life has not fully resumed. We are not at the finish line yet.
We know we can do it.
As phase 3 of the economic
New
restart
COVID
plan.
restrictions will mean that elementary.
In times like these, get trusted news from a trusted source, your public broadcaster. Anytime, anywhere, anyway. CBC Vancouver.
First of all, there's some people who say, look, if 20-somethings are getting infected, they're testing positive, overwhelmingly, they don't get very sick. Often their symptoms aren't great at all. Are we overreacting?
We need to overreact. It would be safer for us to overreact than underreact when we saw what was happening around the world. We are still in a global pandemic.
Well, BC's approach to the COVID-19 pandemic is one of the many strategies Dr. Bonnie Henry is standing firm on. Our provincial health officer's one-on-one interview with Ian Hannamansing is airing on tonight's edition of The National.
And Ian joins us now. Ian, this is actually the second time you've interviewed Dr. Henry during the pandemic. So when you spoke with her a few months ago, she was pretty much universally revered. But now as schools have reopened, I think it's fair to say public opinion has begun to shift a bit. How's she handling that?
Well, you guys know, right, that all through the summer, really, people were watching her briefings. Some people wearing T-shirts with her image on it. There was a mural on a wall. People loved Dr. Bonnie Henry, and many people still do. I saw the responses to a couple of things I put out on Twitter. There is still a lot of support for her. But on a couple of issues, yeah, there's been kind of a drumbeat of criticism, and one of them is the back-to-school plan. So when I sat down and talked to her, I said, you know, there are some teachers and some parents who are saying publicly that you don't have their children's best interests at heart. Here's her response.
Yeah, that's hard for me to hear because absolutely the most important thing that we want to do is to be able to have children back in a learning environment and to do it safely for everybody. 80% of parents, the 300,000 people who answered our survey, 80% of them said they had challenges and their children were suffering not being in the classroom setting. So that was our focus, and we have layers of protection to do that.
She has such a calming voice. And yet, if you're a very strong pro-mask advocate, maybe you don't find her voice so calming. And a lot of people, again, tweeting to me, why is she not bringing in the mask rules we're seeing in some other provinces to make them, for example, mandatory in most public indoor spaces? She hasn't done that. She doesn't feel it's necessary. We talked a little bit about that as well. We're not wearing masks now. I mean, I'm not wearing one either. Would we be safer right now if we had masks on?
No, you see, these are the things that we have learned. There are times when you need it. If we were sitting closer together and we were having this conversation, then absolutely. But if you can maintain your distance and that's safe, we know that. You know, with a large environment, lots of empty space, this is good.
And plenty of space between all of us here in this big open newsroom, well partitioned, no masks here. All right, Ian, so looking ahead, another question on many people's minds, vaccines. Did Dr. Henry have any indication when that might be available?
She sure did. And I should point out, I think the overwhelming theme of our interview, even as case counts rise, was optimism. And certainly she is optimistic, I think, in a good way, on vaccines.
No, the optimist in me is like early 2020 or 2021. I see a couple of good things. I think by next summer, if the vaccines that have been, there's about 8 right now that are in phase 2, 3 trials, and I expect at least one of them will work out.
One other thing I should point out, and I think people might find this surprising, despite those rising case counts, she feels that BC pretty well does have things under control, that when they find positive cases, their contact tracing has been very effective. So again, some optimism from Dr. Bonnie Henry.
All right, very good. Thanks for doing this, Ian.
Thanks.
And you can watch more of Ian's conversation with Dr. Henry, including how she's been coping with the mental health effects of the pandemic, on tonight's edition of The National.
Packing for school in the time of COVID-19. One high schooler's hot tips next.
For
was just the beginning. As the horror of what happened at the World Trade Center was still just starting to sink in, reports started coming in from Washington of explosions and fireballs. Then the chilling news that another hijacked passenger jet had crashed into the Pentagon, leaving a gaping hole in the military nerve center of the U.S. Late tonight, word that hundreds of people may have died in the Pentagon, possibly as many as 800. The CBC's Adrian Arsenault joins us with the latest. Adrian.
Peter, Washington, D.C. is currently under a state of emergency. It feels like it's easing a little bit now, but for most of the night, these streets have been the domain of military and emergency vehicles as the bulk of the hundreds of thousands of people who work here were sent home earlier in the panic of the day.
Any warning, any suspicious package.
Before their eyes, the terror of New York flew into their own backyard. At 9:45 a.m., an explosion at the Pentagon.
And the next thing I know, there was this tremendous explosion as it hit the Pentagon. I looked right.
The military nerve center of the United States, workplace of more than 20,000 people under attack. A hijacked American Airlines 757 with 64 people on board had just left Dulles, Virginia, en route to Los Angeles. Then it changed course and crashed into the West Wing. All 5 floors collapsed.
And an enormous gap has been cut in this building.
Mercifully, Pentagon officials say, the plane hit a newly renovated and minimally staffed section of the building. But death here would be unavoidable. As the effects of the escalating catastrophe started to sink in, the United States military at home and overseas was put on the highest alert. And in Washington, a state of emergency was declared.
Everybody back. Everybody back.
The White House, the Capitol building, all empty. And by mid-morning, every federal building in Washington was evacuated, sending nearly 250,000 people into the streets. Across town, early, unconfirmed reports of an explosion at or near the State Department. On any other day, that would be crisis enough. Here, today, it just gets added to a horrible list.
Very angry. Very angry that somebody has such callous disregard for human life.
And it would continue. Just before noon, a 4th commercial jet crashed just outside Pittsburgh. A passenger aboard the United Airlines plane had called police to report a hijacking, only moments before it went down in a cornfield.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. Join CBC Vancouver's Lien Yeung for Vancouver Magazine's Restaurant Awards. Toast the city's top restaurants virtually this year on Zoom and Facebook. Register at vanmag.com. And don't miss Surrey Fusion Festival on September 26. Celebrate food, music, and culture virtually with cooking demos, dance lessons, and more. Visit surreyfusionfestival.ca for the full lineup and check us out at cbc.ca/BC.
As we know, kids across BC are back in class, but under very different circumstances.
Yes, CBC Kids contributor Isabel DeRoy-Olson shares some tips on what to bring with you to keep COVID safe.
If you're heading back to school this fall, the stuff you're throwing in your backpack might look a little different. Here's a few things to keep you and your friends safe when going back to school. You can expect to see more hand washing stations and hand sanitizer pumps around your school, but it's a good idea to carry your own just in case. Most provinces are giving masks to everyone going back to school. If you live in BC like me, each student will be given 2 reusable masks. You can also bring your own mask from home if you want it to match your outfit. When you're not wearing it, you should stash it in a paper bag to keep it clean. If you're allowed to bring personal items, be sure to label them. And don't share anything with your friends, especially food or water bottles. When you get home, you'll want to throw your used masks in the laundry or wash them right away. And wipe down things like your phone, pens, and pencils. For CBC Kids News, I'm Isabel in Vancouver, and have a great first day of school.
Well, the weekend is here, so is Johanna Wagstaffe with the forecast. You normally from your broadcast location there have one of the best views in the city. It's just fantastic, but not so much tonight.
No, you're right, Mike. This is downright eerie, almost Mars-like behind me as we start to get that setting sun. Normally I can't shoot right into the sun, but it's so muted because of how dense the smoke is. And again, we have widespread special weather statements in place for this smoke that is sticking around for the weekend. Let me take you to the current temperatures. That would have been our story if it wasn't for the smoke. Coming down slightly today at a 21, expected to be around seasonal for the weekend. Again, watching that widespread air quality statement, but no rain in the forecast to sweep things out until early next week. Temperatures will remain hot in the interior, and that's when we will see that smoke move eastward for Sunday. Dropping even more for Monday as we get a bit of a westerly flow, I should say. It's Tuesday. We'll be watching for the rain that'll hopefully clear some of this out.
Yeah, let's hope for that. Thank you so much, Joe. All right, and that does it for us tonight. Before we go, a reminder, you can always watch this newscast live online every day at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, find us on CBC Gem. That's a free app. Also on Facebook and YouTube. And if you want to watch us on CBC television during the NHL Conference Finals, we'll be on at around 7:30, 7:45, unless the game goes into overtime.
That's right. And Dan Burrett has your late local news on CBC television at 11 o'clock, as always, right after the National. And tonight we leave you some more of those images of the hazy skies we're seeing due to wildfire smoke from across the border. Have a safe weekend.
Good night.